This is a blow-up. When the pictures were being taken back, and most of these were shot in 75 and 76, by the way. The pictures, the agencies, the CIA, and most of the intelligence community were very fascinated by this when it was going on. This is actually a computer blow-up. It's a process picture. It's been digitized back in the 70s by a CIA office in Zurich, Switzerland. They were trying to understand the propulsion systems or learn something about them from these things. And this was one of the pictures they chose. Billy really didn't get that close to the ship. It's just been enlarged and filled in. But it makes a very dramatic looking picture. For those of you who might be slightly scientifically oriented, let me give you a crash course. See this bar right here? This is a very important factor in what makes this ship work. This craft basically doesn't produce what we would call anti-gravity. All matter is comprised of atoms. Follow me on this. It has electrons and protons. We have electrons spinning around a nucleus, right? So the concept is that anywhere you would go in our atmosphere or in the universe, anywhere you go, there are atoms or subatomic particles that have electrons. Well, as long as you've got electrons around, one of these things will work. This device actually is designed so it will swim within electrons. That's what it's doing. Here's what happens. Down at the bottom, right here in the center, we have a reactor for power. We have a rod that goes up to the center. And up here at the top, we shoot a charge, a very positive charge. And right above, where this rim is right here, the whole top of this ship, the surface area of the craft, a positive charge is shot out. And what it does, it charges the electrons that are flowing around the top of the craft, and it makes a vacuum right over the top of the craft. That's what causes it to lift up off the ground. Because down in the bottom, out in this area, down here, the charge is all different. There's a negative charge put out by the reactor down here. There are 3 capacitors on the bottom, 120 degrees apart. When the capacitors fire, a negative charge goes out the bottom, but the capacitors do not work if the craft is too close to the ground. The planet itself grounds out the charge of the capacitors. So they have to lift it off the ground before they can have the capacitors charged up. So that's the purpose of the vacuum at the top. And this right across here is an interesting kind of metal which separates the positive charge from the negative charge, because the surface of the craft is highly charged by this intense field that's going on. So you have to separate the two. We have the charge at the top, slowly lifts the disc up off the ground. It gets up about 12 feet. The capacitors down at the bottom, there are 3 of them in a triangle form down at the bottom, charged up. As soon as they kick in, the flow of electrons then moves down the side of the ship, gets out to the edge, and electrons have a very peculiar nature. They will not turn a corner. And when electrons get out to the edge of the right out here, they accumulate. And this accumulation, as soon as the charge gets high enough and they accumulate to a certain point, a field goes all the way around the craft, and that's what you see glowing at night if you see a disk. When the field gets up to a certain frequency, voila, we've got propulsion. The ship is then isolated within its own gravitational or magnetic field, and at that point, basically, the bottom of the ship is chasing the top of the ship, which is in a vacuum. And you've got a way to move a craft around. Now, if you accelerate that with a tremendous energy force they have within the reactors inside, which, by the way, are no bigger than the size of a football, it's an implosion system with no radioactivity. You can put your hand on it while they work. They're very small. That creates a strong enough energy field that you can move around anywhere you want to go. So if you're thinking of building one, by the way, the more of the science stuff, how to create the charge, the voltage that you need, and the other things are on a website I put on the web. If any of you are interested in that, I'll give you the address later on. You can dial in and read the whole thing, and perhaps you can build one or something. If you do, bring it to the next shift meeting, and we'll all go for a ride. You know. This is building some landing tracks. You can see them down here, the 3 landing tracks where the craft sit on the ground. It's kind of reminiscent of crop circles, isn't it? Here Billy's got his tripod out in the foreground, and the crafts are off in the background. Here we've got a regular sized ship and 2 little ones again. Those little remotes. This is a different kind of craft. It doesn't sit down on the ground. It floats. The bottom of the crafts are flat. Burns the ground up pretty good though. There's one at night. It wasn't a solid craft. It was just more of an energy field. Billy took several pictures of it. We have about 20 witnesses that also took pictures of this. It changed shape. Small objects came out of the large one, flew around the house. Billy tried to communicate with it, but communication wasn't possible. Later he was told that he had been paid a visit by a group of life forms, if you want to call it, from another world that do not exist in solid form. That there are many kinds of life in various shapes and forms, and some of them are non-physical. And the non-physical ones can move their essence or their energy field or whatever you want to call it to where they want to go. They get together in groups and kind of like jump to different places that they want to go to. Kind of like biolocating, I guess we might call it. And what you're looking at here is a picture then of a life form that exists in a non-physical form that biolocated to Earth for whatever reason, perhaps just curious about Billy. These are the last photo sessions taken in 1981. Billy's got them pretty trained by now to park by trees, as you can see, and known objects. He calls it the Italian wedding cake. The balls on top of it were experimental. They apparently have since dropped that design and no longer needed, but this is a matter displacement device. They first acquired the knowledge to transmit, or you might say teleport, their crafts on their very large crafts first, and then they're downscaling the technology here to the little ones. There's also a movie film of this coming in and zipping around the tree that he shot at the same time. And here we are coming in around behind the house. How would you like this to come floating through your back window? You look out and here's coming down in front of the house. That's where Billy lives in Schmidruti. Like they say in Men in Black, some swamp gas reflected off of Venus, and you got to. Well, as you can see, this is why this case has been about the most controversial in UFO history, because with these kinds of things to look at and talk about, it gets everybody pretty charged up. And here they are leaving at night, taking off from the house. The film imbalance causes it to look gold. The craft is actually silver. Here you can see the bottom of it, what looks like some sort of crystalline objects down at the bottom with some sort of etchings all around the circumference. Okay, we'll stop right there. Okay, we can have the lights back on now. Everybody kind of watch your eyes. We're back. Meier's contacts went on till 78, ended in October 78. The time I got there, they were pretty much all over. But I didn't go there really to see the ships. My own personal interest really was what we might be able to learn from these folks. You know, it's not going to be that far, probably in the too distant future, maybe with sometime within the next 50 years, they are going to land on the White House lawn, or somebody's going to. And we're going to have open commerce with life forms from other places. We are going to meet the family of man in the universe sometime. It's going to happen sometime in the future, probably when, after we've gone through some changes and grown up a little bit and got more responsible as a planet, somebody will probably decide, okay, it's time perhaps to make connection with us. These Pleiadians, anyway, say they're not quite ready to do that and think we're really several hundred years away from that before they are interested in any kind of open commerce. And I asked Billy, I says, why